For more of this kind of content, you can subscribe to the channel, like the video, and leave a comment. The wind howled like a living thing against the windows of Pine Ridge Mountain Rescue Station, rattling the glass in frames that had weathered 40 years of Colorado winters. Zara Chen pressed her face against the cold window, watching snow swirl in the amber glow of the station's emergency lights. The storm had arrived faster than predicted, turning what should have been a routine Tuesday evening into something that felt apocalyptic. Another coffee? Marcus Rivera's voice cut through her brooding. The rescue coordinator moved with the quiet confidence of someone who had pulled people from impossible situations more times than he cared to count. His weathered hands held a steaming mug, and his dark eyes held the kind of patience that made people want to confess their secrets. "I'm fine," Zara muttered, though she wasn't fine at all. She hadn't been fine for months, not since she dropped out of engineering school, not since she'd moved back home to face her father's disappointed silences and her mother's careful questions about her future. The rescue station had become her refuge, a place where she could volunteer and feel useful, even if it was just answering phones and organizing supplies. Marcus settled into the chair beside her, his radio crackling with weather updates. Storms supposed to last through tomorrow night. Good thing most folks had sense to stay home. He sipped his coffee thoughtfully. "Your dad's flight got delayed in Denver?" Zara nodded. David Chen was supposed to return from a conference that evening, but his commercial flight had been grounded. Part of her was relieved. She'd been dreading another conversation about her plans, another gentle lecture about not giving up on her dreams. How could she explain that her dreams felt like someone else's clothes, ill-fitting and uncomfortable? The radio crackled to life, with Elena's voice from the communication room. "Marcus, we've got a problem. Missing hiker reported on Falcon Ridge. Female, 16 years old, went out this morning before the storm hit. Cell phone last pinged near Eagle's Nest Overlook." Marcus was on his feet before Elena finished speaking. "How long ago did she check in?" 6 hours. Parents thought she was at a friend's house. Friend thought she was home. Classic miscommunication, until they started calling around an hour ago. Zara felt ice form in her stomach. Eagle's Nest Overlook was treacherous in good weather. In a blizzard, it was a death trap. She'd hiked those trails dozens of times with her father when she was younger, back when she still believed she could do anything. "I'm calling in the team," Marcus said, already reaching for his phone. "But with this wind, we can't get the helicopter up, and the roads to the trailhead are probably impassable by now." "What about snowmobiles?" Zara found herself asking. Both Marcus and Elena looked at her. She'd been volunteering at the station for 3 months, but always in support roles. She'd never suggested participating in an actual rescue. "Too dangerous for volunteers," Elena said gently, "especially in these conditions." But Zara was already thinking, her mind mapping the terrain she knew so well. The old logging road. It comes up from the south side, connects to the trail system about a mile below Eagle's Nest. If we could get machines up that way. Marcus studied her with new attention. "You know that area?" "My dad and I used to hike there every summer. I know every trail, every shortcut." The words came out stronger than she'd felt in months. "The logging road is sheltered from the worst wind. It's doable." The radio crackled again. "Marcus, this is Tom. I'm stuck behind a jackknifed semi on Highway 25. Won't make it in for at least 2 hours, maybe more." Elena cursed softly. "That's our best snowmobile operator." Marcus looked at Zara for a long moment, and she saw him making calculations she couldn't follow. Lives, weighed against risks, experience against desperation, protocol against necessity. Can you handle a snowmobile in this weather? He asked finally. Zara's heart hammered against her ribs. 6 months ago, she would have said yes without hesitation. Now, every failure and disappointment whispered that she'd just make things worse, that she'd be more burden than help. But somewhere out there, a 16-year-old girl was facing the mountain's fury alone. Yes, she said, and meant it. The snowmobiles roared to life in the station's heated garage, their engines cutting through the storm's howl like chainsaws through silk. Zara pulled on the rescue team's spare gear, her hands shaking slightly as she zipped the heavy jacket. The helmet felt foreign and important on her head, like wearing someone else's authority. Elena checked the GPS units and emergency beacons with practiced efficiency. Visibility's gonna be maybe 20 feet once we get up there. We stick together, no matter what. If someone gets separated, we stop everything and find them first. She looked directly at Zara. No heroes. We follow Marcus's lead and we bring everyone home. Marcus emerged from the supply room, carrying extra medical gear and thermal blankets. Sarah Mitchell, the missing girl. Her parents say she's experienced, but 16-year-old experienced and mountain in a blizzard experienced are very different things. He handed Zara a radio headset. You'll be our navigator once we reach the logging road. Elena and I know rescue, but you know the terrain. The weight of responsibility settled on Zara's shoulders like a lead blanket. What if she'd forgotten details about the trails? What if her memory was wrong? What if she led them into danger instead of towards safety? The familiar voice of self-doubt whispered its poison, reminding her of every test she'd failed, every expectation she hadn't met. But Elena's gloved hand squeezed her shoulder. You've got this. Marcus doesn't take chances with lives. If he trusts you to guide us, there's a reason. They rolled out into the storm, and within minutes, Zara understood why mountain rescues claimed lives. The world disappeared into a white void that seemed to swallow sound and direction. Her snowmobile's headlight carved a narrow tunnel through the swirling snow, but beyond that cone of visibility, nothing existed. The cold found every gap in her gear, and the wind tried to push her off course with invisible hands. The logging road was exactly where she remembered it, though buried under 3 feet of fresh snow. Marcus took the lead, breaking trail, while Elena brought up the rear. Zara rode between them, her mind working to translate memory into navigation. That twisted pine meant they were halfway to the junction. The steep section, with exposed rocks, was coming up in another quarter mile. Trail splits ahead, she said into her radio. Left goes to the camping area. Right climbs toward Eagle's Nest. We want right. Copy that. Marcus's voice crackled back. How's the grade? Steep, but manageable. There's a switchback section that might be tricky in this snow. They climbed steadily, the snowmobiles groaning against the incline. Zara found herself falling into a rhythm, reading the terrain through memory and instinct. This was her element in ways that lecture halls and textbooks had never been. Here, knowledge wasn't abstract theory, but life and death navigation through an unforgiving landscape. Halfway up the switchbacks, Elena's voice cut through the radio static. Hold up, I think I see something. They stopped, engines idling, and followed Elena's pointing finger into the white void. At first, Zara saw nothing. Then, barely visible through the snow, a flash of color that didn't belong to the mountain's winter palette. There, Elena said. Orange. Maybe a jacket or pack. Marcus was already moving, plunging into the deep snow on foot. "Stay with the machines," he called back. "Keep them running." But Zara could see what he couldn't from his angle. The orange wasn't on flat ground. It was partway down a steep slope, maybe 20 feet below the trail, caught against a cluster of rocks that had probably saved someone from falling much farther. "Marcus, wait!" she called, pulling off her helmet. "It's not on the trail. She's down the slope." He stopped, following her gaze, and Zara saw his shoulders tense as he assessed the situation. Getting down to Sarah would require ropes and careful positioning. More importantly, it would require someone light enough to be lowered safely and experienced enough to not panic on a cliff face in a blizzard. Elena was studying the slope through binoculars. "She's moving. I can see movement. She's alive." Relief flooded through Zara, followed immediately by a new fear. They'd found Sarah, but now they had to get her out. And looking at that slope, at the angle and the exposure, Zara realized, with crystal clarity, that she might be the only one who could reach her. Marcus was thinking the same thing. "Zara, have you ever done any technical rescue work? Rappelling, rope work?" "Rock climbing with my dad. Not rescue, but I know the basics." "This isn't rock climbing in good weather," Elena warned. But Sarah was down there, probably injured, definitely hypothermic, and the storm was getting worse. Every minute they spent debating was a minute closer to losing her completely. "I can do it," Zara said, and this time, when the doubts whispered their warnings, she pushed them aside. Someone needed her. Someone's life depended on her not being the failure she'd convinced herself she was. Marcus nodded slowly. "Then let's get you rigged up." The rope felt alive in Zara's hands, vibrating with tension and possibility as Marcus checked her harness for the third time. Elena had anchored their system to the snowmobiles, creating a backup that could support the weight of a small building. The cliff face disappeared into swirling white below them, but Zara could make out the orange splash of Sarah's jacket, maybe 20 feet down, caught against a ledge that looked barely wide enough for one person. "Remember," Marcus said, his voice steady despite the wind, "you're not trying to be a hero. Get down there, assess the situation, get her stable, and we'll pull you both up. If something feels wrong, if anything feels unsafe, you abort and come back up. No arguments." Zara nodded, though her heart was hammering so hard she was sure they could hear it over the storm. She'd rappelled dozens of times, but never in a blizzard, never with someone's life hanging in the balance. Every instinct screamed at her to let someone more experienced take the risk. But Elena was too heavy for the anchors they could establish in these conditions, and Marcus needed to coordinate from above. "Zara." Elena's voice was gentle but firm. "That girl down there, she's somebody's daughter, maybe somebody's sister. She's scared and cold and probably thinks nobody's coming for her. You're going to change that. You're going to be the voice that tells her she's not alone." The first step over the edge was pure terror. Then training and muscle memory took over, and Zara found herself moving down the cliff face with careful precision. The rock was slick with ice, and the wind tried to slam her against the stone, but the rope held firm. Above her, Marcus's voice provided a steady stream of encouragement and guidance. "Looking good, Zara. Nice and steady. You're almost there." Epidemic. Sarah came into focus gradually through the snow. She was huddled against the rock wall, her orange jacket torn and her face pale with cold. One leg was bent at an angle that made Zara's stomach clench, but her eyes were open and aware, tracking Zara's descent with a mixture of hope and disbelief. "Hey there," Zara called down when she was close enough. "I'm Zara. with Mountain Rescue. Are you Sarah? The girl nodded, her teeth chattering too hard for speech. Zara touched down on the narrow ledge and immediately began her assessment. Sarah was conscious and responsive, but her left leg was definitely broken, and she was showing signs of hypothermia. Her lips were blue, and her movements were sluggish. Worse, the ledge they were on was unstable, held in place by ice that was already starting to crack under the additional weight. "Okay, Sarah, here's what we're going to do," Zara said, keeping her voice calm and confident, even as she worked to attach a second harness to the girl. "My friends up there are going to pull us both up. It's going to hurt your leg, but we need to get you somewhere warm. Can you help me get this harness on you?" Sarah's first attempt at words came out as a whisper. I thought nobody would find me." Something cracked open in Zara's chest. She recognized the tone, the hopeless certainty that she wasn't worth the effort. It was the same voice that had been telling her for months that she was a burden, that people would be better off without her problems. "Well, you were wrong about that," Zara said firmly, adjusting the harness and checking the connections. "A whole team of people dropped everything to come looking for you. My partner Elena hasn't stopped moving since your parents called. Marcus organized this entire operation in under 30 minutes. We don't leave people behind, Sarah. Not ever." As she spoke, Zara realized she was talking to herself as much as to Sarah. When had she started believing that she was the exception, the one person not worth the effort? Ready for extraction, she radioed to Marcus. "Conscious victim with probable broken leg and hypothermia. We need to move fast." "Copy that." Starting the pull. The ascent was controlled chaos. Sarah cried out when the movement jarred her injured leg, but she held on with fierce determination. Zara climbed beside her, using her feet to keep them both away from the rock face, talking constantly to keep Sarah focused and alert. "Almost there. Just a little more. Elena's got hot chocolate waiting for you, and I bet Marcus has already called your parents to tell them you're okay." When they reached the top, Elena was waiting with a rescue sled and medical kit. She went to work on Sarah immediately, stabilizing the broken leg and wrapping her in thermal blankets while Zara collapsed in the snow, adrenaline finally giving way to exhaustion. "Outstanding work," Marcus said, helping her to her feet. That was textbook perfect under impossible conditions. But Zara was watching Elena work on Sarah, seeing the professional competence and genuine care that went into every movement. This was what it looked like when people used their skills to make a difference, when they stepped up instead of stepping back. "We need to get her down to the station," Elena said. "The leg needs proper medical attention, and she's still hypothermic." Loading Sarah onto the rescue sled behind one of the snowmobiles, Zara found herself holding the girl's gloved hand during the careful descent. Sarah squeezed back, and in that simple pressure, Zara felt something she hadn't experienced in months. The knowledge that she had done something that mattered, that someone was safer because she had chosen to act instead of doubt. The storm was beginning to ease as they reached the station, and through the thinning snow, Zara could see the lights of the ambulance that Marcus had called. Soon Sarah would be in a hospital, her leg would heal, and she would go back to her life. But something had changed on that mountainside that couldn't be undone. Zara had seen herself clearly for the first time in months, not as a burden or a failure, but as someone capable of making a difference when it mattered most. The hospital waiting room smelled of disinfectant and anxiety. Zara sat beside Sarah's parents, still wearing her rescue gear, watching David Mitchell pace the worn linoleum while his wife clutched a cup of coffee that had gone cold hours ago. The storm had finally broken, leaving the world outside clean and white under emergency lighting. The surgery went well, Dr. Martinez said, emerging from the elevator with the kind of tired smile that meant good news delivered after too many hours on her feet. Clean break, no complications. Sarah will be on crutches for a few weeks, but she'll make a full recovery. The relief in the room was palpable. David Mitchell sank into a chair, like someone had cut his strings, while his wife pressed her hands to her face and wept quietly. Zara felt her own eyes burn with tears she hadn't realized she'd been holding back. "Can we see her?" Mrs. Mitchell asked. "She's asking for someone named Zara," Dr. Martinez said, looking around the room. "Says she needs to thank her properly." Zara's throat tightened. "That's me." Sarah's room was quiet, except for the soft beeping of monitors. The girl looked impossibly young in the hospital bed, her face still pale, but no longer bearing the blue tinge of hypothermia. Her leg was elevated in a cast that already bore her mother's signature in purple marker. "Hey," Sarah said softly when she saw Zara. "They told me you're the one who came down to get me. I was just part of the team." The words felt automatic, the same deflection Zara had been using for months whenever someone mentioned her contributions at the rescue station. "No," Sarah said firmly. "Elena told me what happened. You guided them up the mountain in a blizzard. You rappelled down a cliff to reach me. You held my hand the whole way down and made me believe I was going to be okay." Her voice grew stronger. "That wasn't just part of a team. That was you choosing to risk your life for mine." Zara felt something shift inside her chest, like a locked door finally opening. "I couldn't leave you up there." "But you could have. It would have been safer to wait for more experienced rescuers, or for the storm to pass. Elena said as much. But you didn't wait, because you knew I might not have that long." Sarah's eyes were clear and direct. "My mom always says that we show who we really are when nobody's watching and nothing's easy. Yesterday, when everything was impossible, you showed me that some people run toward danger when someone else needs help." Through the room's window, Zara could see the mountains in the distance, their peaks glowing pink in the dawn light. Somewhere up there was the ledge where she'd found Sarah, the place where everything had changed, not just for Sarah, but for her. "I've been feeling like a burden," Zara said quietly. "Like I keep failing at everything I try. Like people would be better off if I just stayed out of the way." "Did you feel like a burden when you were coming down that cliff to save me?" The question stopped Zara cold. She remembered every moment of that descent, the focus and clarity, the absolute certainty that she was doing exactly what she was supposed to be doing. "No, I felt needed, essential. Because you were. Because you are." Sarah's voice was matter-of-fact. "Maybe the problem isn't that you're a burden. Maybe the problem is that you've been trying to fit into spaces that weren't meant for you, instead of finding the places where you belong." Before Zara could respond, Elena appeared in the doorway with Marcus behind her. "Sorry to interrupt, but I thought you'd want to know. The news crews want to interview the rescue team, and Sarah's parents are telling anyone who'll listen about the volunteer who saved their daughter." "I'm not good with reporters," Zara said automatically. "You don't have to talk to them," Marcus said. "But you should know that what you did yesterday, that was exceptional, not just the technical skills, though those were solid. The decision-making under pressure, the way you kept Sarah calm, the leadership when we needed someone who knew the terrain. That's not something you learn in a classroom." "Which brings me to something I wanted to discuss," Elena added. We've been looking for someone to head up our volunteer training program. Someone who understands the mountains, who can teach navigation and basic rescue techniques to new volunteers. The position would come with full rescue training, EMT certification if you're interested. It's not much money, but it's important work. Zara's first instinct was to say no, to point out all the reasons she wasn't qualified. But then she looked at Sarah, who was smiling at her with complete confidence, and at Marcus and Elena, who had just offered her a future doing work that actually mattered. "I need to think about it," she said, but even as the words left her mouth, she knew her answer. "Take your time," Marcus said. "The mountains aren't going anywhere." After they left, Sarah's parents arrived with flowers and gratitude that felt too big for the small room. They hugged Zara like she was family, and when David Mitchell pressed a folded check into her hands, she tried to refuse until he explained that it was a donation to the rescue station, made in her name. "Our daughter told us you said something about not leaving people behind," Mrs. Mitchell said. "We wanted you to know that she's not the only one you saved yesterday. You saved 2 parents from losing their child. That's not something we can ever repay." Walking out of the hospital into the crisp morning air, Zara felt like she was seeing the world with new eyes. The mountains that had always been her playground now looked like her purpose. The rescue station wasn't just a place to volunteer anymore. It was where she belonged. Her phone buzzed with a text from her father, whose flight had finally made it in that morning. "Heard about the rescue. So proud of you. Can't wait to hear the whole story." For the first time in months, Zara was eager to tell it. Three months later, Zara stood at the front of the rescue station's training room, facing a group of new volunteers whose enthusiasm reminded her of herself not so long ago. Outside, spring was painting the mountains green, but inside, her focus was on the young faces looking to her for guidance. "Mountain rescue isn't about being fearless," she told them, echoing words Marcus had said to her on her first day as a paid instructor. "It's about being afraid and choosing to act anyway because someone needs you more than you need to feel safe." Among the trainees was Jake, a college dropout like herself, who'd admitted privately that he was here because he felt useless everywhere else. There was Maria, a retired teacher looking for purpose after her husband's death. And Tom, barely 18, who wanted to prove he was more than the troublemaker his high school teachers thought he was. Zara saw herself in all of them, people searching for a place where their particular combination of skills and heart could make a difference. "Today we're covering basic rope work," she continued, moving to the practice wall they'd installed. "But before we get into the technical aspects, I want you to understand something. The rope isn't just equipment. It's trust made physical. When you're on the other end of that line, someone's life is literally in your hands." As the class worked through the exercises, Zara moved among them, correcting technique and offering encouragement. She thought about Sarah, who had returned to school with a slight limp and a story that had made her something of a local celebrity. The girl had stopped by the station the week before, bringing cookies and news that she was considering studying emergency medicine. "You changed my life," Sarah had said simply. "Now I want to change other people's lives too." But Zara had learned something important in the months since the rescue. Sarah hadn't been the only one whose life had changed on that mountainside. The girl who had rappelled into the storm to save someone else had discovered something about herself that no amount of self-doubt could erase. Instructor Chen? Jake's voice pulled her back to the present. He was struggling with a knot, his frustration evident in the set of his shoulders. It's not coming together? Zara asked, moving to help him. Nothing ever does for me, he said quietly. Maybe I'm just not cut out for this kind of thing. Zara smiled, remembering saying almost exactly the same words to Marcus months earlier. You know what I learned. Sometimes we think we're not cut out for something because we're measuring ourselves against the wrong standard. You're not trying to be the best rope climber in the world. You're trying to be good enough to help someone who needs it. That's a very different thing. She guided his hands through the knot sequence, feeling the moment when understanding clicked into place. There, you've got it. It's just a knot, Jake said, but his smile suggested he knew it was more than that. It's competence, Zara corrected. And competence builds confidence. Confidence builds courage. And courage is what you need when someone's counting on you. Later, after the trainees had gone home to practice their knots and study their maps, Zara sat in the station's small office working on supply orders. Elena found her there, surrounded by catalogs and budget spreadsheets. You know, Elena said, settling into the chair across from her. Marcus and I were talking. This training program has had the highest completion rate in the station's history. More importantly, the volunteers coming out of it are better prepared and more confident. They're good people, Zara said. They just needed someone to believe they could do it. Sounds familiar, Elena said with a knowing look. Marcus wanted me to tell you that the county is considering expanding the program to other rescue stations. They're going to need someone to coordinate that expansion. Someone who understands training and knows the mountains. Zara looked up from her spreadsheets. That would be a big job. It would be, but you've proven you can handle big jobs. More than that, you've proven you can help other people handle them too. That evening, Zara drove up to Eagle's Nest Overlook, taking the long way around the established trail. The spot where she'd found Sarah was marked now with a small cairn, stones stacked by grateful parents as a memorial to the moment their daughter's life had been saved. But standing there in the fading light, Zara thought about another memorial that couldn't be seen. The death of the person she'd been before that storm. The frightened girl who'd believed her worth was measured by other people's expectations. She pulled out her phone and called her father. Dad, I wanted to tell you about this promotion possibility. It's not what you and Mom planned for me. Not engineering or business or any of those safe careers. But it's mine. It's work that matters. Work I'm good at. Work that uses everything I learned growing up in these mountains. David Chen was quiet for a moment. Tell me about it, he said finally. So she did. She told him about the training program, about seeing confidence bloom in people who'd thought they had nothing to offer, about the satisfaction of building something that would help others for years to come. She told him about finding purpose in places she'd never thought to look. You know what I hear in your voice? Her father said when she finished. I hear someone who knows exactly who she is and exactly what she's supposed to be doing. That's not something you can teach in school. As night fell over the mountains, Zara understood with crystalline clarity that worth wasn't something other people gave you or took away. It was something you discovered by stepping into the spaces where you could serve, where your particular gifts met the world's particular needs. She thought of all the future volunteers who would pass through her training program. People like Jake and Maria and Tom. People searching for their own place to belong. She thought of the lives they would save, the differences they would make, the confidence they would build by learning that they were capable of more than they'd ever imagined. The storm that had brought Sarah and her together had been merciless and dangerous, but it had also been the crucible that revealed who they really were when everything else was stripped away. And what it had revealed was simple. They were people worth saving, and people capable of saving others. True self-worth isn't discovered in comfort or success, but in moments when we choose to serve others despite our fears and doubts. When we stop measuring ourselves against impossible standards and start measuring ourselves against our willingness to help, we often find we're far more capable and valuable than we ever imagined. The hands that reach out to save others often discover they were worth saving all along. Period. Period. Or a period. End of sentence.